Episode 53, Church Media and Technology. Welcome to the Visionary Variety Podcast, where we cover cool stuff like photo, video, film, books, and technology. So switch on your brain and enjoy the show. In this episode, we're going to be talking about all the fun technology and all the opportunities that we have today in the modern church to amplify and share the message by using technology. And Nate and Josh and I have lots of various experience, different areas of the church. So I think this is going to be a fun and informative episode for anyone that's interested in either serving as a leader or as a volunteer. Maybe even for pastors who are looking to up their game with their technology side of their church and ministry. Hopefully this episode will be really great for you. Okay, let's get this episode started by first talking about what is our history in church media and ministry and things like that concerning this whole topic. So let's start with you, Nate. Tell us what you've done and just real quick, kind of a recap of what your experience is with this.
Well, a super recap. I started when I was 10, and this upcoming April I'll be 25. I think I got out of the church media kind of stuff about maybe 2 years ago. But just kind of got thrown in the deep end because, the family did it, so Nate's going to do it. And ever since my dad's like, hey, get up on that camera and run it. And I was like, yeah, if I mess up, it's your fault. It just kind of stuck. So from 10 to, I think, 18, I did it pretty solid for every single weekend. It felt like every single event. And a lot of it was a learning curve. No schooling. I think there was a lot of just crash courses in YouTube University and having no clue what anybody was saying. So, and just fake it until you make it. And I learned along the way. And yeah, so now we're here.
And Josh, how about you?
Well, as the elder statesman on this episode, I actually started way back when with an overhead projector and individual little sheets of lyrics.
I remember those.
Yeah, that was rough. No, but after taking a break from that and seeing some of the huge changes in media, it was actually Nate's dad who got me back into the media department around the same time that Nate started. So our beginnings are kind of linked with one another. And so it was definitely, hey, I need you to come in. You know what you're looking at through the lens of a camera. I need you to run a video camera for the church. And by the way, we're televised, so no pressure.
Don't screw up.
Yeah, seriously. And so it just evolved from there. I actually, in the last probably 6 months, got out of actually running media to where I'm now more of the creative side. So I'm creating more content for the media team at the church that I'm at now. So I've come a long way, and I've seen a lot of the changes in church media.
Well, for myself, I was raised in church, like I think both of you guys were. So I've seen a lot of changes, and I've always found myself involved in volunteering in various areas. Through my high school years, I was on the band, so I wasn't necessarily in the media ministries. Being on the band, I did find myself doing some production work for music and learning, the stage side of production and sound quality and mixing and things like that. So coming up to more current, I'm part of a 3-year-old church plant, Livingstone Church in San Antonio. And basically what I've done since the beginning, since they opened, was I was one of their main sound engineers. So I've been on the board more times than I have count, the soundboard. I've done videography for the church events. I've done photography for church events and services. I've, done the testimony videos and editing together event videos, things like that. So a lot of editing, a lot of production. Before coming back to San Antonio, I was a media director down in Brownsville at a large church. So I was pretty much over. The best way to describe my job to people down there is anything that had electronics, I was in charge of it. That's what it seemed like. Because I was over the sound man, I was over the lights, the video cameras, the live stream, lyrics, everything. It was up under me, and I loved it. It was such a fun job because all those different areas of production I really enjoy, and it was a very, very fun job. We had lots of good tools, which made it even more fun. So I've pretty much done almost all of it. We've talked about a lot of different areas already that, we've all had our our feet in, our hands in, and let's kind of talk about the general why. Like, why do churches have to have technology? Why do churches have to have a sound system or big fancy screens? Or why do they have to be, broadcasting on the internet? Are they just like showing off? Is this stuff necessary for the gospel? We have to be able to see things in a simpler way. When we get more detailed, I feel like we're getting very legalistic,
Yeah.
and we start picking out, specific scenarios, and we're saying, "Oh, this is unscriptural," but really, a lot of people are missing the heart and the purpose behind complicated things are actually pretty simple. There's pretty simple reasons why we do these things.
Yeah.
So the main purpose of church is, actually you could probably make a few of them, but one of the main purposes of the church is to get the gospel to the masses, right? So how do they do that? Do we just have one guy standing in the field, hoping people show up and sit on the grass and hear him from 200 feet away? Like, it's just not realistic these days. We have much more interest in the gospel than we did in the first century. We have much larger population. We have a lot of things to consider. And so churches look differently than they did in the first century. And, it's good to stick to the roots, and it's good to keep in mind what was the origin. But bringing it back to my main point is the basic reasons behind these technologies are pretty simple.
Yeah.
So the sound system obviously is to amplify the message, the sermon, and the music so that everyone can hear clearly and can understand what the message is.
Yeah.
In third world countries, they don't have this luxury. They have to cram into a room, and if it's large enough, hopefully they can hear the message from the back. Maybe they can't, and there's a lot of limitations to not having a PA, public announcement system. So sound system is just to get the sound out clearly to a larger area and to make sure that it is high quality. The visuals, say, the projection screen and the fancy lights and stuff like that, that also is to carry the message in another way. We've got the sound established. Now we need the visuals. So if you're far away, you can't quite follow the pastor, especially people with a little bit older, maybe with vision problems. Having a big screen is actually pretty sweet because you can see everything clearly that way. The visual goes hand in hand with the audio. Social media. So this is something that has popped up into a lot of church cultures in the past 10 years, is having a strong social media presence. They pay people, whether secular companies or within their church, someone has the job of being the social media director or person that does that. And I think it's awesome. Social media is a ginormous audience and platform that we didn't have 20 years ago, but we have it now. So hey, why not use that for the gospel, right? Use that for the church. So social media is a very powerful way to reach. I know my church, being on the smaller end, I heard tons of stories coming from my pastor telling me, hey, the pictures you've taken and posted on social media have helped us so much because people see those pictures. They're engaging. They see happy faces. And this is not stock photography. This is real people at our real church. And he would constantly, to encourage me and to keep me focused on, hey, what you're doing matters. He would tell me these stories that people saw the website and they were impressed by the quality, and they came to see what else we had to offer, and then they found the gospel, and they found family and worship and everything else that our church can bring to the table, not just fancy, cool pictures and lights and cameras. Thank goodness, right? If you only have that going, this is not a Hollywood production, but we do have the same technology that Hollywood has in a general sense, and for a good reason. And you'll find churches that are more conservative that strongly disagree with a lot of stuff I just said. In fact, this is totally by coincidence. I was listening to a sermon today on a podcast where the guy was saying that churches these days, modern churches, do whatever they can to get the message out. They do whatever they can to bring people to the church, to keep them interested and keep them engaged. And he had a problem with that. And I don't really agree with his viewpoint on that. As long as you're not sinning, as long as you're not drifting too far into the carnal world of being a show off and distracting from, again, the heart of the message, then I think it's okay to do almost whatever you have to or whatever you can to get the message out and make it effective.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fine line between the production aspect, and that's fine. We have to produce a service. I mean, that's just, just to use that term. But it's a fine line between a production and a show. Churches have to make sure that their heart's in the right spot. I mean, every member of the team. I mean, if your heart's not in the right spot, then all you're doing is putting on a show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay to produce a service, and it's okay to have a production. For me, that's where it is. I mean, I believe it was the founding pastor of Planet Shakers down in Australia.
Oi.
They go big with their lights and their smoke and I mean everything. He was asked one time, he's like, "Why do you do this?" And he's like, "Well, Solomon's temple was the best of the best." And there is no reason why we should not use the best of the best at our disposal to worship our God. He deserves the best, so we're going to use the best.
Why not have an awesome party? Because we're excited about the message. Why not make it into that, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, there's going to be opinionated people, but you know, if you're focusing on like, well, there's too much technology, you're too Hollywood, then you're missing the point, and then you're getting offended over something that's just trying to further, like what Josh was saying, like the kingdom and everything. And then, you know, we blow this way out of proportion, and, you know, then we have a situation.
Well, like you said earlier, Josh, there is a fine line, and it's a balancing act. It really is. It's you have to keep a balance of staying true to the gospel and to the message and the mission of your church and the vision of your pastor, but you're also balancing the other side of the seesaw is, you know, what technology are you going to use and how far are you going to go to do that job?
Yeah.
And you have to also not get too much to where your audience, you know, on average is being distracted by the things you're doing. And different churches have different, you know, limitations or thresholds rather with your general audience. If you're living in a smaller town with older congregants, it's definitely going to be distracting if they have fog and colored lights that change with every song, you know? But a younger audience in a college town, if you don't have that, it's almost distracting, you know? You have to know who's in your church and how to steward them for the Lord. And that brings me to my next point is that we have these tools at our fingertips these days, and you don't even have to spend a whole lot of money to have these things like you did, you know, 20, 30 years ago. Things have become so cheap and production quality has gotten so easy to achieve. We have these things and we have to steward them as pastors or as leaders or directors and producers. We have to see them as we're stewarding these things, you know, for God. So in our experience of doing these different jobs and, you know, having goals and achieving things, what are some achievements, maybe some things that you've done that you're kind of proud of, or maybe that you know, really just used your brain power to solve a solution? What are some things that you guys have done in those ministries?
I know one thing that I had to do coming back to my church. Obviously, I had been involved in a video ministry very heavily there in San Antonio. And the church I came back to was a church that I'd been at for a couple of years already. They were just getting into the media. We had the screen, but we really weren't doing any video. We were still producing cassette tapes.
Oh, cute.
Yeah. And not in a hipster way. Like, we were still doing cassette tapes. But it was just the idea and seeing how a video ministry can really impact people, especially somebody that may not be in our city. You know, somebody may want to send a DVD to a friend or a relative in another state. So I had the heart and the desire to create a video department, and approaching my pastor and the church board and coming up with the proposals of this is what we would need to start it, and you know, doing the typical proposal thing of here are 3 separate proposals, one's 10,000, one's 20, and one's 35, and letting them choose. Them literally choosing the base package and ordering the stuff for me. And then my pastor looking at me go, this is your vision, you go for it. And literally having to fumble my way through camera positions. And then now all of a sudden I'm recording the video, and now how do I edit? And having to edit the video in post-production and producing DVDs and it just, you know, so that was my big accomplishment. And of course, now I look back, I'm no longer at that church. I'm in another state, but I'm still very, very closely tied to my church in Austin, and looking at their video production now and seeing where I started it and where it is now, it's amazing. I mean, you hit on it just a little while ago about the social media. And it's something that I'm helping my current pastor really understand with especially live streaming on Facebook and on the social media platforms, that we have to approach that as it's another campus. If you stream online on your website or on Facebook, that is another campus. You are now a multi-campus church, and it has to be approached that way so you can give those people that are a part of that particular campus the quality that they deserve. And it's not just, oh, hey, some guy in my church wanted to start a video department, so I'm going to let them, which is what I got thrown into. That, I think, for me, that's one of my biggest accomplishments, is creating a video department, literally, where my pastor had no vision for it. It was solely my vision.
A lot of them don't.
And they don't, because they've never experienced it. And they're not technical people. So they don't understand the impact. And then when you create it and you start showing that, what that impact can have, and how it may not be affecting your church in numbers, people may not be flocking to your church. Yeah. But when you can say, hey, we sent a DVD, or we had somebody log into our website or on our Facebook page from another state, and they commented on our Facebook page, or they commented on our YouTube channel, or whatever it is, that they accepted Christ into their life, that one person, in my opinion, and in every pastor I've ever talked to about this, and in their opinions, in my opinion, that one person is worth every dime that we've spent to build a video department. Yeah. And so that's why I consider that one of my biggest accomplishments in church media. So, Daniel, what about you?
Well, one of my favorite things that I accomplished in Brownsville, this is more of a specific, like, one case thing, not a general thing like what you said, but we had an issue in Brownsville where our main screens, we had a left and a right screen. We could either show the lyrics with the cool animated background, or we could show the live video of the band / the pastor. Yeah. We couldn't show both. And, switching back and forth, we got accustomed to, they did that for a few years. So that was the norm. And I'm sure the audience was used to that. But it was still kind of weird. Like, during instrumental breaks, we would switch to the live video and show the band, show the whatever. And then we'd have to cut back to the lyric video on the big screens. And they didn't know how to do a lyrics overlay on top of the video, because the video itself, the videos of the band or the pastor, was coming from a device called the TriCaster, which is a Windows-based multimedia hub for live streaming and live video. Very, very cool tool. We'll talk about it later. So video was coming from that, but lyrics are coming from a totally separate Mac computer downstairs. It's very different systems. Whoa. So what I found out was, I found a plugin for a TriCaster that could accept a video stream, not from a camera or not from a video cable, but from the network. So then I found that the corresponding plugin for ProPresenter, which is our lyrics program downstairs on a Mac, could send lyrics over the network as a video signal. And so a TriCaster picked up the lyrics, and then TriCaster would lay over the lyrics on top of the video. But I changed the formatting, so it was basically on the bottom of the screen, just like, captions or subtitles. So that was really cool. So basically, the ProPresenter was outputting lyrics with a blue background, no more animated background, just blue screen. And then TriCaster deleted the blue and put the lyrics on the bottom of the video. And my pastor was so happy. Nice. And so was I. I was like, this looks amazing. This is like what they do in the big concerts. We finally figured it out. And it was a creative solution. It didn't cost anything. It was using what we already had. And it made everyone's job so much easier. We weren't switching video back and forth really at all. And during sermon time, instead of having, the lyrics were during worship, during the sermon, we could show the scriptures or the bullet points or whatever, overlaid, basically using green screen, blue screen technology on top of, on the bottom half of the screen. And it was very professional, and it helped. The purpose was, sure, it looks cool. What the purpose is, it helps convey the message more clearly and with less distraction. Yeah. So that was cool. Some other things I did was, when I was on the band at my church in high school, I made techno music on my own as like a weird nerdy hobby. And I learned that I could use this skill for making instrumental tracks for the worship team. So mostly for our big holiday productions, I made instrumental tracks for our big like our really big songs. And this is when we had like, oh man, I wish I had a head count, but like 2,000 to 4,000 people would come to these services. Whoa. And so this was a big production. We put a lot of work into it. There was acting, there was costumes. It was a big thing. And so I made, instrumental tracks that the band could play along with. It had, strings and big orchestral drums that we didn't have in person, and just all kinds of stuff to make this sound more beautiful and more professional. Um, I did some other cool thing where I got our church logo and I turned it into a vector file, which is like a digital representation of an image. And then I turned that into a 3D object. And in my 3D program, I animated like a flyby, like the camera would like fly through and come out of the logo, and then boom, it'd be right there on the screen. And that was like our branding. We used that on almost all our videos for quite a while. So that was really beautiful and easy. I was using what I already had. I used a freeware program to do the whole thing, which is pretty cool. And then lastly, I'm really proud of training volunteers to do their job and love it. And to this day, a volunteer runs the entire video side of the program down in Brownsville. And I remember when he first started, I had him on a camera, and he worked his way up and was proved very faithful and talented. And now he's the main director, and that just makes me warm and fuzzy inside.
Nice.
By the time I left, he was coming into that role, and he was learning to take my place. And that's a good thing. When you're a leader, don't see volunteers as competition. See them as on your same team.
Yeah.
They might replace you one day in a good way. God will move you out of that church possibly in the future. And for the church's sake, you need to have people that can do all the jobs you do by the time you're gone. So,
Oh, for sure. And I'm going to interrupt real quick. One of the best things I've ever heard, and it's really impacted me as a leader and even as just a volunteer. If you're a leader and if you are not training your replacement, then you're not leading correctly. Because that's the ultimate goal, is to find those people that have the same passion as you do, that are involved in the media, and help build them up. And like you said, to train them in every aspect of the media department. So eventually one day they can take over, because you don't know what God's going to have in store. I mean, I left Austin, Texas, and am now in Boise, Idaho. I mean, I had no idea that was coming. It wasn't what I had ever dreamed about, but God said, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
Stepped out in faith. And in all honesty, I'm in the best spot in my life. I'm not in charge of a media department or anything like that, but I'm helping grow a church because of the knowledge that I've gained. And the people that I trained down in Austin are the ones that have taken over. And so you have to be training that next leader. You have to train that next generation. You have to train your replacement, because they may go and start another media team at another church, or you might. So,
Nate, what about you?
Well, it's going to sound like I'm reading off y'all's notes because we all kind of bleed through similar situations. But I think some of the proudest moments that I can remember, being in the media department in church, was not only being there and learning, but being able to pass on, the knowledge. Like a friend's like, man, how old are you? You doing media? I'm like, yeah, you want to join? And
are you old enough, sir, to be 12-year-old Nate?
And, kind of like what y'all have said, it's nice knowing years later those people are still in that position. And you're like, man, I remember I was in like 6 years deep and somebody just came in for the first time. And then 6 years later or whatever it's been, they're still there, rocking and rolling. But a lot of the funnier things was, grabbing the handheld camera and doing crazy stuff that probably shouldn't have been done, but yet it became a thing.
MTV camera angles.
I don't think they gave me much flexibility when we were streaming on TV, but when internet became a thing, and I don't think they edited any of my stuff out, but as time went on, being able to, like what y'all were saying, being able to pass that on to other people and saying, hey, I've done that and it's not fun, but if you stick in for the long haul, it will be worth it. And maybe you learn something from this, or you realize that's not what I like, and you move on. And, you just kind of can sort out the people that, are you in it for the right reason? Or are you just doing it for a show? Because if you're in it for a show, heads up, buddy, this is going to be hard work. even though it's behind scenes and nobody gets to see you.
Yeah, you do have to have your head or your heart in the right place, because you with these kind of positions, this is not rock and roll worship leader up front and looking pretty.
With your
This
skinny
is like
jeans.
getting sweaty and anxiety attacks and stressful meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Making things work minutes before the service starts. You're fixing stuff. Like, it's hard work, and very, very few people I've ever seen recognize you.
The only time you ever get recognition, especially if you're on the soundboard, is when there's feedback or something goes wrong and the entire congregation turns around and looks at you.
You get recognition right there.
Oh, yeah.
You sure do.
Oh, yeah.
What's funny is I've been at our church since I was 9 years old. Worked the media department forever, it felt like. And I was still, as I was walking in the door, hi, is this your first time? I'm like, look. I'm like, okay. Like, you don't know.
Hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
So
Being in the media department, it's like you said, it is a thankless job. Can the pastor get up there and still preach without a sound system? Yes. Can you have worship with acoustic instruments and
Of
no
course.
PA system? Yes.
yeah.
But you were there to enhance the experience. I mean, the media-driven society that we live in now is one of the reasons why so many churches are now adopting these technologies, because that's what people expect, especially that younger generation. And so if you, the listener, the volunteer, the leader, whoever may be listening to this episode, if you're thinking about joining a media team, do it. Because I'll tell you right now, the leader is desperate for you to come in and help.
Every church.
Every church.
Even
It
if they
doesn't
play
matter.
hardball.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many people are on the team. They need you. One of the things that drove me nuts the most in Austin was the pastor would ask, he'd say scripture, and if it wasn't up immediately, there would be times that he'd just stop and go, hey, Josh, are you going to put that scripture up? It's like, why are you throwing me under the bus like that, bro? I mean, I'm sorry. I've hit the button. The computer's running slow. Buy me a new computer and it'll get up there soon. Oh, yeah. No, I still consider him my pastor, by the way. And he will always be my pastor. I love the man to death. It all boils down to that is you may not get thanked. If you're looking for recognition, if you're, you said it earlier, if you think that this is going to be a rock star position, you may think again, you may want to go be an usher or help out in the parking lot. But, if you're willing, if you truly have a heart to serve, and it does not matter if you get thanked or any recognition, if you just want to help further the kingdom of God, the media team is the perfect place to do it.
I've had a lot of pushback when talking to someone who, if they say they're interested in the team, I'll explain some of the positions we have that would need to be filled, and they push back and they say, "Oh, I'm not a computer person," or "I could never operate a video camera." And you know what? After I get through that fear, and once we get through that, and I actually put their hands on the device and show them after a few times, you'll be surprised at how technical quote unquote non-techie people can be.
Oh, for sure.
So if you're out there, if you're in that position where you're like, yeah, I could never volunteer, that would freak me out. Don't let that excuse keep you away from helping the gospel get across in your church, because you could be completely wrong. And I only say that because I've seen it happen a lot. If you're in the leadership position, if you're on the other side, if you're the guy trying to find volunteers, make sure that you can communicate clearly the purpose of your media ministry.
Yeah.
And that you don't have to be a very technical or artsy person.
I have been in many churches that have say, hey, I know you don't get this, so come shadow me a couple of weeks, and then, we'll gradually make the switch. You
need to find creative ways to train your volunteers. Like what I did was Wednesday night services, there was a lot less people, and the demand on the production team was much less. We didn't have so many fancy cuts and videos and things like that. So I would have volunteers just shadow. They wouldn't even touch anything for the first 2 weeks. They would just watch, and they could ask questions later. They could write questions down during the service, and we'd address them later. But they would just watch, and then later on I'd give them a few responsibilities with, being overseen. They could touch and do some stuff, and as they got more comfortable, they could move forward with actually controlling and affecting things. Another option is doing a training session with maybe 2 or 3 people when there's not service happening, and you can just find ways to train them on camera or a pro presenter, play a song and have them follow along with the lyrics, just simple things like that. So you got to be creative so you're not scaring people, and don't let the technology intimidate them, because something I've learned is you can never learn something if you're scared of it.
Yeah.
Someone's never going to learn or even master something if they're intimidated by that thing. So you got to help people get past that fear point, and then they can learn anything. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. Let's talk about some specific tools that we have found that we just absolutely love, and that honestly we probably couldn't have done our jobs without. So I maybe just because I'm more like computer oriented, I wrote down like a list of a bunch of software and things like that that I love. Um, Nate and Josh have a few things later, but let me get through my list real quick. So, you guys, I'm sure you guys have used these tools too because they're really popular. So, the first one is actually a Facebook group. It's called CMG Visual Church Media. Look up that on Facebook and you'll find the Facebook group. It's a really big international group with pretty much all the users on this group are either volunteers that are operating technology for a church, during services, or they are media directors, video directors, church, social media gurus, things like that. So you can learn a lot. If you're a pastor that has no clue where to start, that group is a really great resource to just ask questions, just stock some posts and read all the comments. You will gather a lot of helpful information from people who do know what they're doing. Next product that I love is a program called Team Viewer. This is a remote control program that I can log into another computer remotely, and I can see that computer's desktop on my desktop, and I can do anything on that computer as long as I have internet access and that other computer has TeamViewer on it. So in Brownsville, I had probably 8 computers I had to update stuff on. I wasn't able to go to all these computers and do the stuff and then go to the next computer, do that thing, go to the next computer, do my thing. I could log in remotely with TeamViewer and do it from my office, and it was amazing. I even had a few extreme situations where volunteers didn't show up. So I logged into the TriCaster on my phone, and I was camera switching from camera one. So I'm sitting on camera one controlling it because no one showed up. And also the director didn't show up. So I've got on my phone TriCaster remotely and I'm clicking cut to camera 3, cut to camera 1, show the sermon point. It was like I was directing from the camera on my phone. Not ideal, but that was pretty awesome that I was able to save the day and do that.
Nice.
And lots of other uses for TeamViewer.
The nice thing about TeamViewer is it actually doesn't even matter if you're on a Windows machine logging into a Mac or vice versa. Mm-hmm. As long as they both have TeamViewer, you can do anything on that computer, which has saved my rear end and my wife's rear end and the church that we used to go to. It saved us a couple of times, and you didn't have to worry about that Mac Windows communication. It was all TeamViewer and you're good to go.
On Sunday evenings, we would rebroadcast our entire service on the stream. So we recorded the whole video audio file as one file, and then at 6 p.m. Sunday night, we would re-show it, right? So instead of me driving back to the church and putting it on and leaving and then going back and turning it off, I would remote in with TeamViewer into the TriCaster, turn it on, hit stream, hit play, boom. It was so cool.
Nice.
So I love that. All right, next product is Google Drive. I know it's kind of a no-brainer, but this application of cloud storage and collaboration is so powerful. If you can find ways to make it work for your team and work it into your workflow, Google Drive is awesome. Next is Planning Center. This is an online website where you can schedule any number of volunteers, speakers, pastors, bands, whatever. Yeah. You can upload lyrics. You can upload video files, entire service outlines. Like there's so many things this website can do. I'm sure a lot of I don't even know about. I use it for scheduling volunteers, and I'm also using it as a volunteer because I get scheduled every week. So yeah, Planning Center is awesome. It costs some money, but it could save you a lot of stress and get things flowing effectively. Next program is Evernote. This is a cloud-based note-taking program. Yeah. So I use this. I've used this to write sermons, to share things with people, taking notes during services. I would use this when I worked in Brownsville. I'd have so many random tasks. Like my day literally started with cleaning the pool. So that's all I need to say for you to understand. I did all kinds of random stuff. So I had to have tasks like in order with checkboxes, times and dates, and when I did things and notes. So I used Evernote every day, almost every hour, to keep track of things that needed to be done. Next is Adobe Creative Cloud. We all love Adobe because we use Adobe to edit this podcast. My photography would not be possible or as easy to do without Adobe. So I'm a big Adobe fan. Adobe Creative Cloud is Adobe's monthly subscription program to get the programs that you need for your church or your profession or whatever. You can pay $10 a month and just get Photoshop and Lightroom. But for church use, I would suggest getting the All Apps program, which is $53 a month, and you get all the Adobe programs. So you can edit video, you can edit sound, you can make graphics, you can do pretty much everything under the sun that Adobe offers for just $53 a month. That's honestly not a lot for all the stuff that you can do. When you get to a point of church production, you're going to need to do all those things.
Yeah, for sure.
Video, image, and sound. My last thing is later.com. This is a website for scheduling social media posts. There's also hootsuite.com, which is similar. You can schedule your entire month worth of social media posts for upcoming events, for services, for just random scripture posting in the middle of the week. All those things, you can schedule them ahead of time and just let them run. And it is amazing. I use it for my photography, and it's so great because I can sit down in about 20 minutes. I can schedule my entire week worth of posts, and I don't have to do a thing during the week. And it's just great time saver. And of course, you can schedule your things for specific times, which is the key to good social media schedules. So yeah, that's it for all my stuff. What do you guys have?
Well, I think you hit on most of them. CMG Visual Church Media is a great Facebook group. I'm part of Church Sound and Media Tech's Facebook group, and then especially for sound engineers. The last time I was a sound engineer, I was using a Behringer X32 soundboard.
I love it.
Get online, get on Facebook, type in whatever board you're using. I'm sure there is a group for that specific board. And it's always good to be able to get on one of these groups and just ask questions or, hey, this is an issue I'm having. And I've gotten so much help through those pages that, it has been invaluable. It's been one of the best tools that I've had access to. You said Planning Center. Planning Center is a great program. Every church I've ever been at has used it just because of everything it does. It's now evolved into you can have the check-in program. So for like your kids' check-in for your Sunday school department, Planning Center literally will do everything for you, and it is a great program. If you're a member of the band, you can get your music through Planning Center, so you can just have your tablet instead of having page after page after page of music on stage with you. My main program that I used beyond those was ProPresenter, especially for running lyrics and media on the screens. It's just absolutely probably one of the most simple programs. It's on Mac and PC, which is great. It is a Mac-based program, but they did release it on PC. And so it just makes things easy. Just drag and drop into your playlist and your media library. It'll take care of everything. If you're running everything Mac, you can hook it up through Ableton Live, and it'll run automatically.
Hey, Ableton runs on Windows too.
Does it? Okay. Well, I'm a Mac guy.
I have it. I use it to make the music for my podcast.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, Ableton's a great program. Ableton's another one. It's another great program for church media. ProPresenter is really nice because you've got the ProPresenter remote app. So if you've got an iPhone or an iPad, there have been plenty of times where I've been running sound and running media from my iPad and reaching over with my left hand and hitting the light cues. Running the whole thing by myself.
See, back in my day, they didn't have that app. I had to use TeamViewer.
Well, there you go.
The old way.
So, there's so many more programs out there, and I'm sure that there's some that we may not even touch on. And, I do know people that say easy worship is better than ProPresenter, and I'm not, we're not
heresy.
Yeah. You're wrong, but I'm not here to step on your toes. But yeah, those are just a few of the programs that I've used.
I can't believe you say that they're wrong and you're using Apple.
Because
don't go there.
Because I got saved and I have an Apple products.
I like to steward my money by not spending all of it on Mac products.
Well, that's why you buy refurbished and used Mac products.
Yeah.
I think honestly, out of everything Planning Center and ProPresenter and TriCaster, like the three main cores that I use for pretty much everything. TriCaster was something that we use as laid out so you can do like live streaming or recording or both at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's a godsend, no puns attached to that, but like literally you could add graphics and commercials, you can take a break, and it's like literally everything that you want in front of you, and it just makes life super simple.
TriCaster, I do know at one point, TriCaster was actually being used by the Major League Baseball.
Nice.
I do know they were using TriCaster for like the baseball all-star games and just regular presentations of just regular season games. So TriCaster has lots and lots of use. It's not just churches that are using it. Like this is big stuff.
If you're enjoying this show, hey, why not share it on social media and comment your opinions and experiences on the Facebook page, because we want to hear from you. So you can reach us on any of our social media accounts or through email at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, so we talk about some fun and easy things we love to use in church. What are some challenges that you guys have encountered in your journeys of church media and technology? I'm going to say number one, volunteers.
Oh my goodness.
That's the main challenge. It's what makes everything run, but it's also the hardest part is volunteers. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
And there's some responsibility on the leader to keep the volunteers healthy spiritually and emotionally, and help them love their job and help them realize the importance of the job. But the rest of it, I'd say the other 80 or 90% is on the volunteer.
Yeah.
Some of my best services were because of volunteers. And some of my worst services were because volunteers weren't there. But yeah, you got to take care of your volunteers that are underneath you. You have to see them. You have to see yourself almost as a pastor, and you've got a small flock of the people that are helping you, and you need to take care of them spiritually and emotionally. Be personal. Don't just treat them like a cog on the wheel. They come in Sunday morning, they mess up, you reprimand them, and then that's the only connection you have with them is like telling them, hey, you did good, or hey, you messed up really bad. Like, you got to have more of a connection than that with your volunteers. So if you are in the position of leadership and training, make sure that you're developing actual relationships with these people, because they're going to be more likely to respect you and to serve with a better heart and just deal with things better.
Yeah.
When they mess up, they're going to deal with it differently than if they feel like you're at the taskmaster. You're just going to point out all their flaws and tell them to be better next time where they can't come back. That's not a healthy environment for this kind of work.
I know you're joking, but there are actual pastors of media in churches now.
Yeah.
It's important because the teams are so big and because they're so crucial. If there was a strike on the media team and they all just left, it'd be a rough service.
For sure.
With any medium to large church. So you got to take care of those people.
So talking about volunteers, at this point, we could insert another title for this episode of episode 53, Church Media and How I Lost My Hair. Because it is dealing with volunteers and dealing with people, no matter in a church setting or outside of a church setting, dealing with people is always going to be the most stressful situation out of all. I mean, you can run a new cable for a microphone, you can run a new cable for your Ethernet, or whatever the case may be. An instrument break, you can always replace it, but it's easier to replace that stuff than it is to replace a person, because volunteers are so absolutely crucial. We all started off as a volunteer at some point, and the unfortunate thing is some people, once they get into that position of power and leadership, it goes to their head. And you said it best. They're volunteers, they're people. We cannot just rip them apart. If they make a mistake, obviously we have to discuss it. We have to try to correct it. But you know what? Ultimately, I'm not perfect. I've made my share of mistakes. I will continue making my mistakes. And it's just, you got to get through it. And earlier you mentioned sometimes finding a volunteer is hard because they may not be very tech savvy in their opinion. I had one of the best media operator. She ran this lyrics for us. She preferred Wednesday nights because there was less to do, less on the screens, but she was one of the best ones I had. And she was in her 70s.
Awesome.
She knew the tempo of the song. She was retired.
Nice.
So she came into the church knowing the songs for that service because she had listened to them on Planning Center on her phone.
Nice.
And
That's a good volunteer right there.
Oh yeah, no, she was great. But when she first approached me, well, I don't know much about computers. I just got my first iPhone, and she just didn't know. And it was okay. Well, I'm going to sit down with you. I'm going to show you what it really is. Shadow me for a few weeks. And this is and it's okay. And then there's been those young guys that walk up with their iPad and their MacBook or their laptop, and they're like, "Hey, I want to join the media team." And you're like, "All right, well, this is how I do it. You're going to shadow me for a few weeks, and then we'll go from there." And they show up that first Sunday or that first Wednesday, and they're like, "This is awesome." And then by the end of service, they're like, "This sucked," and because we didn't get the recognition. And so it is a challenge dealing with people because everybody has their own personality, their own attitude. Stuff happens outside of church. I mean, sometimes you come in a bad mood and it's like, okay, well, I understand that you're having an issue, but hey, we've got 10 minutes before service. Can I pray with you real quick? Is there somebody you can go chat with? Is there one of the pastors I can get if you don't feel comfortable with me praying? And I will say that was one of the things that I've tried to do, and I've not always succeeded, but spend a minute with your media team before the service starts. I mean, even if it's after you started that 5-minute countdown before service, pull your team together and say a quick prayer because ultimately, when you're behind the soundboard or the lighting system or a camera or the computer running lyrics or whatever the case may be, you have to understand this is your form of worship.
Yeah.
Let God move through you while you do this because it is worship. We are there to worship God in everything we do, even if that means I'm just pushing a button and changing slides. But
you're honoring God and you're getting the message out there. So that's worship.
Something else is like being available. And like what Josh is saying is, you could show up and say, "Hey, I'm here." And you promise to run the camera. And it's like, "Oh, hey, actually, I'm not going to have you on cameras." And you're like, "What?" One thing is like, you really just have to be available and go with the flow and take the punches and just learn. And if it's shadowing, if you shadow for the next year, well, I mean, you probably should talk to somebody, but
it's a long time to shadow, a whole year.
At the end of the day, it's like, if that's something you want to do, then do it, do it to the best of your ability. And, because one day you might replace them, or one day you might be stepping down as a leader and you need to be replacing, like what Daniel was saying, you need to be able to have a replacement.
Or if you get the flu, like who's going to run the show if you're just like out,
Yep.
Something bad happens, you got to have a backup. Josh, you mentioned earlier you had a 70-year-old pro-presenter master running the show. Well, a lot of my best volunteers were, just random, normal, everyday people. Like my main director that was really the best at the time. He was what was he? He was a lawyer. No, he's a CPA. So he was like this professional, really clean cut CPA guy. And, come tax season, he couldn't be on the schedule. But the other times he was there every service. Sometimes he wouldn't be scheduled and he would notice, oh, like the other guy isn't here yet. Or, oh, so-and-so's sick. I'll just go up there and help. I'll jump in the director's room and take care of the service. Don't worry, Daniel, I got it. And that's awesome. Like he had a volunteer's heart like no one else. And his wife was the same thing. She was a pro-presenter queen. Like she was great. She was there every service. And sometimes when she wasn't scheduled, she'd jump back there to take up the slack when someone was late. And that was awesome. Those kinds of people are our best friends when we're working those ministries.
For sure. When you do have somebody like that, that's also probably the biggest source of encouragement for the leader is having somebody that is so willing to just step in, scheduled or not. Hey, I've never run that camera, but if you need me on that camera, I'll go over and do it.
I think the biggest thing is just learning how to multitask. Like you're probably going to do more than just one thing that night.
don't get typecast into one station of your ministry. Like try to help your volunteers get multi-talented.
Yeah.
It's great to be multi-talented as a volunteer, because then you can shift around and, like I said earlier, take up the slack. Okay, let's move on to a part of this episode that I'm cringing at, but I'm also very much looking forward to. This is going to be the horror stories of leading and or serving in a media department.
and we'll just put out there disclaimer: we're not bashing church. We're saying, hey, we went through this.
Yeah, learn from it. Don't be like us. Learn to maintain your equipment, unlike us, or whatever. So this doesn't happen to you.
Ooh, horror in the church. Oh no, it's a real thing. You know, miscommunication being the first one that I can think of. Like, hey, in a few moments, something's happening. Why are you just telling me, like, you look down at your watch, 5 minutes? Like, seriously? Like, that's a big ordeal. That's going to take like 10, 20 minutes, and I got 5? You know, I'm going to have to work that in service when service is happening. I'm going to be working on that now. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
I've done that. Finalizing a video during worship.
Because
it's going to play afterwards.
I think I have the ultimate worst one, probably. Hey, Nate, we need you at the media section. Awesome. The first service, you need to record an announcement and play it at 11 o'clock service. They did the 9 o'clock service. Awesome. Hey, church starts in X amount of time. And at the computer I had at that time, my computer SD didn't work, like the SD slot. So I had to have that little converter. I recorded it, and guess what was at home? And so I had to get in the car, floor it home, grab it, floor it back, edit the video, and have it ready for the 11 o'clock service.
Oh my gosh. So you made the church news video or the announcement video that morning?
Yeah, it was an announcement that was going to be given at the 9 o'clock, but not going to be given by the same person at 11. That being said, you know, with things like that, I think I kind of was getting there, but assuming when you work in the media that outside departments think you can do everything. Like let's say you specialize in video, and they're like, hey, so can you go switch the sound and run be here for band practice? You're like, what?
It's funny that you mentioned that. That's exactly how I started running sound. I was just the media guy. I was just the lyric guy. I did the lyrics on the screen. And I was approached by our youth pastor. He's like, hey, I know you know how to run media, and I know you're not, I looked at Planning Center, you're not on the list for anything. Can you come up to the youth hall and run sound for us? What? Okay. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but So I ran over to our sound technician in our main sanctuary, and I was like, I need a crash course on sound real quick. And he was like, he's like, this isn't something I can do real quick. Like I've been doing this for years. And I was like, okay, well, this is going to be fun. And so I went up to the youth hall and ran sound. It did not sound good, but I will say there was no feedback, and that's all that mattered to me that night.
And they didn't call your name out in mid practice.
Nobody hollered at me. The youth band and I were all friends. And so it made it real nice because especially after practice, they came back. They knew what position I had been put into. And honestly, I'm glad that assumption was there for me personally because I really enjoy running sound sometimes. I mean, sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just a lot of fun.
When the band has practiced, I love running sound.
You were talking about the miscommunication. I've got a horror story about that one. On our planning day, he's like, "This is the sermon I'm preaching. I need some slides." Great. We get everything ready. Sunday morning, he walks up. Not even during practice or during prayer. It was 5-minute countdown has already started. He walks up and goes, actually, I'm not preaching. I called in one of my friends. I felt God tell me in another direction. Brought in a guest speaker. The guy came up with a sticky note with like 15 scriptures. Here are the scriptures. Here are the scriptures I need. And here's the title of my message. And it was like, service starts in a minute. You want me to do this while I'm running lyrics for worship? Okay, let's go. And we got it done. I mean, between me and our sound tech and our lighting guy, the three of us, we knocked it out. But it was just one of those situations like, bro, I need a little bit more heads up than that. I mean, I thank you for thinking I'm that good, but
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm honored, but I'm not a wizard.
Yeah, no. Next time this happens, I'm just going to walk out. Like, you get to run it.
I became a professional quick editor on ProPresenter. You can right click and quick edit a slide without it showing. Dude, I did that so many times for upcoming points and upcoming lyrics. Like,
the
Spanish.
The quick edit option on ProPresenter is a lifesaver.
You're bringing back good memories and a little bit of anxiety.
Oh, dude, you don't even know. Like Josh was talking about guest speaker. We had a guest speaker come in, and he was like, "Hey, all my notes are going to be live," and I was like, "What?" And so we had to figure out how to get the back screen to show all his notes.
In the world?
And we had to keep up with him. And this dude was like spontaneous, and he was really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downing what he did. No, it's the method of how we got there. The service was good. The service, like what he said, was really good. But having to hit the little left and right trigger on your keyboard and listening word for word what he's saying and keeping up with him. And by the way, hey, and they call me out. And I'm the guy running cameras. They're like, hey, they said you're the guy, which basically meant everybody just passed it on to Nate, and they didn't want to do it.
Scapegoat.
I had to figure it out. I had to get the back screen. Thank God I had somebody there that knew what they were doing a little bit in more detail than I was. My arrow on the keyboard was running the service, basically, because he was reading his notes live on the back screen.
Wow.
Well, two horror stories that came to mind was one, we had two LED lights on the way high ceiling. This is like a 30-foot ceiling. This is a tall sanctuary. And they were the floods, which meant it just kind of a general soft light over the whole stage. So they started flickering like a party club's flicker strobe light. And we couldn't figure out what was wrong. So we went to go turn off the breaker that controlled those lights. Well, guess what? That breaker also controlled the sound system. So we had to communicate to the pastor in the middle of a Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday night service, or was it Sunday? Oh, it wasn't Sunday. We had to basically tell him, we're going to lose sound if we do this. So we did it, and then we restarted it, and I think it fixed it. And then it came back, and it turned out those lights just went plain old bad. And we sent it back to the manufacturer, and they fixed it. But wow, that was a nightmare. So be sure to isolate your systems on different breakers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
You need to be aware. You need to write a very clean label. What does this breaker control? Because you'll need to know. The second thing that was totally my fault was I plugged in an instrument cable to the wrong jack. So let's pretend you're sitting at a big fancy soundboard. You've got all the channels numbered, right? On the left, there's 1, and it goes to 16 on the right. So they're numbered in normal English left to right order. Well, on the back, if you want to plug in something to, say, channel 8, it's actually not where channel 8 is physically. You have to count again from left to right on the back of the board.
Oh, no.
So, I didn't realize that. I lined up the fader with channel 8 to where the input jack was on the back right behind channel 8 physically. But I didn't realize it was like channel 4 or something else. The number was different. And I plugged in the sax cable. Well, the guy did a sax solo. No one could hear it, except it was very barely audibly. You could hear him. And the pastor's like, what happened? Where was the sax? And I was like, I don't know. I plugged it into the right channel. And later when the lights were on, I could see the numbers. And I'm like, oh, 8 is here, but 8 on the back is not here. So
I've had moments like that where I'm just like, I did exactly everything I know how to do. And then light bulb moment, no puns, but it's like, oh.
Well, I realized later thinking about it was with analog mixers, it would have been the case. Like physically you line up the jack and that's the same on the back, right? The fader and the jack are on the same line. But on digital boards, it's different. You go to the back of the board and it's again left to right, 1 to 16 or 1 to 32, whatever.
One more horror story. So
please,
running words. We have a guest singer come in, recording artist, Grammy nominated. I mean, big name musician comes in, hands me a thumb drive and says the lyrics for the songs that I'm going to sing are on the thumb drive. Great, that's awesome. I don't have to Google search them, or now that Pro Presenter has Song Select, I don't have to import them all. He's already got it for me. Plug in the thumb drive, open up the thumb drive. He's got a list of 32 songs.
Oh,
and I'm
no.
like, dude, I was like, homie, what songs are you singing, bro? He's like, I'm not sure. Like, what do you mean you're not sure what songs you're going to sing? And he's like, I actually think I may do a medley of like 10 different songs and just kind of bounce around. And and I'm not even the one scheduled for media that day. So I'm
what format were these songs in, like .txt or something? Doc file?
He actually already had them in a Pro Presenter file. So all I had to do was import it, which was nice.
Then you can't complain. I've had the opposite.
Oh yeah, no. See that I've had the opposite also the opposite also, and it is awful.
Yes.
But so I'm importing all of these songs, and I look over at my media person, and she has a look of pure panic in her face, and I just look at her. I go, you know what? I'll take it today. I didn't realize it was going to be this way, and he literally
You're the martyr.
And and he literally sung a chorus from one song and a bridge from another song and a verse from another song. And we hit almost every single song during his performance. And he came up to me after service and went, that was the best I've ever seen happen. And I'm sitting there the entire time at the time I still had hair. And I was about to pull it out. I don't think I've ever been that stressed because everybody was looking forward to this guy coming, and we had hyped it up, and we had visitors that had come just for him. And, it ended up building a really good relationship between he and I, to the point that I trained his media guy. But it just that day I was like, if I was not in a church, I'd stab you in the throat, because
I know who you're talking about.
I weren't saved.
I won't say names, but I know exactly who you're talking about. And I think he did similar stuff on our end of stuff. I was like, dude, why?
Yeah, no, he's pretty notorious for it. So
the cringe.
Yep.
It's the cringe that makes you a better person.
Yeah.
It builds character, builds grit.
It's these horror stories that we've talked about that really helps you realize why you were there. And it helps make sure your heart is truly in it, and truly in it for the right reason. We've laughed and we've joked and we've told some horror stories, and it's, it's not knocking on churches or dogging anybody. It's just to say we've been through it. You're going to go through it, and that's the biggest thing, is you're going to go through it if your heart's in the right spot. Because if it's not, you're going to come up against this situation and you're going to be like, you know what? I'm out. This has been fun, but I'm going to go help out in Sunday school or something.
Yeah, which is a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, which is leaving media for Sunday school. I don't know why you would do that. I'm just saying. Go help out. Go help out in the parking lot or be an usher. It's easier. That's the biggest thing, is it teaches you, and it's those situations that make sure that your heart's in it for the right reason.
I like how earlier you mentioned taking a minute or two to do a quick prayer and group meeting before service with your team. And that's huge, because working as a team is a huge part of spiritual success and, professional success with your production team. You have to help your team see each other as teammates, because they're not going to see each other as competition. They're going to see each other as helping, one another. They're all parts of a bigger picture. Kind of like in the church, we're all living stones that build up the capital C church, right? Globally. And that's how it is on a smaller scale within a team. You're all different jobs and you're all different tasks, but you're accomplishing one goal. So keeping that mindset in your team is crucial to success.
And I think the biggest thing is just communication. I mean, like, a lot of what happens is there's negative communication, there's positive, and a lot of it is, you may have been promised the moon, but when you communicate with somebody, in the department or somebody that's ahead outside of the department, just make sure that you're not backing yourself in a corner to kind of sound like you're starting an issue. Like communication's key, but just keep a level head and know that it's hard, but just keep an open mind, communication, and like Daniel said, you gotta work a team here. It's a two-way road, and once that other road closes, then you're just butting heads and going around in circles.
And communication is huge. You got to keep expectations up front. You got to tell your team, when to be there, and all the technical notes they need to know ahead of time. You just basically just don't want any surprises, on service. It comes service time. You want everyone to be expecting what's on the outline. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing all of the wisdom and knowledge you've learned the hard way on this subject. I hope that this episode is able to help and bless, someone down the road that is interested in getting into what we've done. Like we said earlier, we would love to hear from you guys. So comment on the Facebook group. If you want to make it more private, you can message us or email us at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you do or have done in church ministry. If it has to do with technology or media, stuff that we've talked about. And, if you need help with something, or if you're trying to wrap your head around something you're struggling with, an issue within the ministry, let us know. Maybe we can help you, or we can point you somewhere that can help you. Also, we've got a poll or a questionnaire that we would love for you to do. If you've listened to this episode, if you've listened to any of our other episodes of the podcast, we want to hear what your opinions are on our podcast in general, because we're really looking forward to this new year of the podcast, improving the podcast, and doing more of what you guys want to hear. That's our goal. So find that poll on the Facebook page for the podcast and do it. It's like 10 questions or something. Really quick, really simple, but that will really give us a great idea of what you're interested in and what you're not interested in. Some of the things you like and don't like about the podcast. We want to hear from you guys. So go and do that. We would much appreciate it. And as always, thanks for listening. Have a great week. If you like this show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can also find our previous episodes there and listen whenever you want. We love to hear from our listeners, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, you can reach us at tvvpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Do you remember your brother? She went, no. I went, exactly. So stop it. She was like, that's not funny, Dad. Like, actually, it kind of is. So